start our second part of this course, which is actually related to numerically dealing with turbulence. So our question is right now, considering all the things that we've learned so far since the beginning of this course, how are we going to simulate the physical phenomena of turbulence? For example, when we talk about solving Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations, RANS equations, uh, we need to use a turbulence model like K-based turbulence models, K epsilon and K omega. There is a transport equation for K, which is your turbulent kinetic energy, and another transport equation for epsilon or omega. And that kind of models actually do not care about the distribution of energy. We looked in the previous lecture, if you remember, this distribution that you see here as well, this distribution of the energy among the scales. So uh, you can think of many distributions with the same area underneath. For example, this is a function, and the area underneath this function from A to B is S. So you can consider too many different various distributions that will give you the same area, the same value for S. So that's one of the problems of the models that are obtained with Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations, those K-based models. They, if you compare them with, for example, LES and DNS, large eddy simulation and direct numerical simulation. So these LES and DNS actually do take care of the distribution of turbulent kinetic energy as well. They are not only interested in the overall turbulent kinetic energy level, which is this area underneath of this, but they also resolve the distribution as well. So you will actually obtain this line, this function, if you can name it as a function, or if you can fit a function, you will get this distribution as well. When we talk about handling turbulence in terms of numerics, so the question is, how do we numerically handle turbulence? We have actually two options, as you see in here. One will be simulation, and the other one will be modeling to obtain some solutions. Simulations like LES and DNS, they do not solve average quantities, they solve for instantaneous quantities. So when you solve for instantaneous quantities, meaning that you are dealing to all eddy structures. DNS has a small enough grid spacing and time steps so that it resolves all length scales or wave numbers. You remember these two? So it can actually recreate the whole energy spectrum. And on the other hand, you have the large eddy simulation, or LES, that literally selects a cutoff length scale. There is a cutoff length scale somewhere in the inertial subrange that you see in here. So within the inertial subrange, you will stop simulation, and then its grid, the LES grid, will be fine enough to resolve all the eddy sizes that are larger than the cutoff length scale. So which are these eddies actually? for example, in here, you will cut it somewhere in here. So you will actually resolve all these eddies in this side, in the left hand side, and then the right hand side of this cutoff length scale, um, you have to model them. So for these higher wave numbers, actually, or smaller eddies, LES models them with some equations. We will call it as a subgrid scale stress, or SGS, subgrid scale stress, SGS stresses. And that you cannot resolve these subgrid scales, and so you have to model their effects. That is why we call it large eddy simulation. So it simulates only the large eddies and then models the small ones. We will talk about large eddy simulation and direct numerical simulation through this course. And we know that the RANS-based models only solve for K, or turbulent kinetic energy, which is the area underneath, the area underneath, or this area underneath here. So, um, of course, if you ignore the energy distribution, this distribution that you have in RANS-based modeling, the results will be much less accurate than the DNS and LES. And if the flow is simple enough, like, for example, a simple pipe flow, it will not be that bad. But if you are dealing, for example, with a very with a multi-stage compressor, with all kinds of rotor and stator interacting with each other, then it will be problematic, because you're oversimplifying a complex flow by just ignoring the physics of the flow. Okay, the fact that simulation takes into account more physics of the flow, and that's why you get more accurate results than modeling. However, the simulation takes a lot of time, basically because of two reasons. Because you have to use very small time, as well as spatial resolution. It takes too long to solve. And in research institutions and universities, we are more interested in physics. And on the other hand, industry prefers RANS-based modeling because they do not need to use very fine grid and very small time steps. So you get the results much quicker, either than either DNS or LES. And actually, this ends the discussion for the first part of the course in here. And you know that we were dealing with the fundamentals of mathematics and turbulence physics in the first part. So in the second part, we will start the modeling and simulation based on what we have learned so far, how we approach to obtain some solutions for turbulent flow problems. So this is the introduction to modeling and simulation of turbulence. For turbulent flows, we either use simulation or we do modeling, as we said, to obtain some solutions. And when we talk about simulation, this means we are actually after looking for obtaining solutions for instantaneous, uh, not simultaneous. This is instantaneous, instantaneous quantities. Uh, and At this point in time, you should be comfortable about what I mean about instantaneous field. Like in your midterm, you had some samples of instantaneous field, and then you were able to calculate some characteristics of the flow, the average, the stresses, Reynolds stresses, and so on. So here we are interested about, for example, velocity vector, but it's instantaneous realization. It means that you take one snapshot. So you take this snapshot and stop, and it means This is not the average. So we do it either by DNS or LES. So you take a snapshot, and um, on that snapshot, you just take the values of pressure or velocity or whatever. DNS, as we said, resolves all the length and time scales, and LES, we said, it resolves larger scales through models for smaller scale motions. And the filtering operation that we were talking about in LES, uh, we call it as a filtering operation, and we said that we have a cutoff length scale, if you remember. And what you see in here is a filter, or ELEC. So you are using ELEC to filter out some particles, right? So exactly the LES, or larger dissimulation, do this. So it uses some ELEC to filter out some uh, big or large eddies, and then smaller eddies will be modeled. So um, when we filter the data for LES, the mathematical operation for filtering that we use to filter, we will give us a filtered equation that retains only the instantaneous condition of large eddies. So you can consider it as just remember that we had some Reynolds decomposition, and there in Reynolds decomposition, you decompose instantaneous velocity into mean velocity and fluctuating velocity. In LES, again, you will filter out your U with some larger field plus some smaller field, and we will talk about this. So it is again the summation of the large eddies and smaller eddies, but this time you are writing everything based on the instantaneous velocity or instantaneous field. On the other hand, we have the modeling in here, and we said that it solves for only mean or average quantities, not the instantaneous quantities. So you can obtain the solutions with Rance equations, the Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations. So in order to solve these, you need to model what we call Reynolds stresses, those U I prime, U J prime bars. And there are all kinds of turbulence models that we will see through this course, and these are eddy viscosity based models, either um, eddy viscosity based models or Reynolds stress models, and etc. But this is the general categorization, this simulation and modeling. So again, we have this turbulent flow, and we said that in order to numerically handle this, we either simulate or model. And when we talk about the simulation, when you solve the Navier-Stokes equation, you're getting what we call instantaneous equations, okay? And the instantaneous distribution of parameters. Instantaneous distribution of velocity, for example, and here it is velocity, it could be pressure, it could be temperature, and whatever you solve. This is the same also for large eddy simulation. So again, large eddy simulation, you have the same thing. If you do the DNS or LES, this is what you get. So the one snapshot or one realization. And you will get the instantaneous distribution of a flow field in a time series, let's say. And if you want to obtain the average of the flow field, for example, you may want to compare the experiments, and the experiments are mostly in average data. Then you need to get the whole simulation duration and then average it to obtain the average flow field. This is what you have to do for DNS and LES. But for RANs, as you see in here, it belongs to modeling. For random simulations, the solution that you are getting directly is already the average, and it is regardless of being steady or unsteady. So it is the average flow field. So you don't get instantaneous flow field information. So don't let the commercial codes fool you while you are solving for example, unsteady flow. That unsteady flow in RANS models, in Reynolds average Navier-Stokes models, are not instantaneous type of data. Those are also averaged. We will talk about it because in the RANS models, when if you remember the Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations, there is no information on the instantaneous eddies. So you cannot solve for the instantaneous flow. Okay, I think this is enough. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you some examples of instantaneous flow field and also average flow fields. And the thing here that I'm showing you is related to my studies during my PhD. And there, the main idea was to investigate the flow behind different types of turbulence generating grids. So you're seeing these grids in here. And the one at the left, this one, is called a regular or conventional grid that you're kind of familiar with from those things you have already searched for the design of the screen in the wind tunnel. So it has a regular, as you see, it has a regular square shape openings with definite uh, values of mesh size, porosity, or solidity, and etc. And these three that you see in here are not regular type grids, and they are called fractal grids. Why uh, do we call it as fractal? Because they have a pattern, and you see the pattern is, for example, eye shaped or a square shaped or circular shape, and uh, this pattern is being repeated, as you can see in here, and it is repeatedly increasing in size or a scale. So it is believed that they are able to generate different length scales in the downstream of the flow. So the study was to investigate the turbulent flow behind these different types of grids. What you see in this picture is a sample of PIV, particle image velocimetry configuration, that was set up during the study. And you can see that there is a laser and all of these mirrors and stuff are being used in here. We have some lenses to convert the beam of the laser into a sheet of laser. This is a laser sheet in here. And then there is a wind tunnel. The flow comes from left to right. And while laser shoots, there is a camera in here that you are taking pictures, instantaneous pictures of the flow. So what is inside is air seeded by some particles that can actually travel with the air. So we were taking data and we were saving the data on the computer, and then we work on the data. Is there
May
any
I ask a
question?
question? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's a little question, but I'm curious about the thickness of the laser sheet.
Yeah. Actually, while you're getting data for two-dimensional PIV, the laser sheet shouldn't be too thick, because if it is too thick, then uh, actually some particles can travel within the thickness of this. And since you are taking your picture from normal to this, then your camera cannot capture this movement from here to here because it is movement from movement in a third, let's say, axis. Because your camera right now is just feeling the movement in, let's say, this axis and this axis, but not in this axis. That's why for two-dimensional PIV, normally they will take it from 1 to 2 millimeters, this thickness of the laser. But for three-dimensional PIV, actually you need, of course, you need a very thick laser because you have to capture the movement of the particles within the laser sheet as well. That's why you need a thicker laser.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So when you get the PIV data, as you see in here, you get the instantaneous flow field. And I assume that you know about the PIV, but the principle is because this is not an experimental aerodynamics course, it is a very simple idea. So you have a digital camera like I showed you in here, and it basically looks at the area of interest, and the area of interest is inside the laser sheet, and its field of view is the area inside the laser sheet, and we have seeding particles, and they appropriately follow the flow, and then the laser which illuminates the area. So as soon as the laser fires and illuminates, the camera captures one image, and then camera waits for delta t seconds, and you see this is dt or delta t seconds, and it could be in the order of milliseconds, microseconds, or even nanoseconds, and then laser shoots for the second time, and camera captures the second image. So basically, what you see in the first image, some particles you see in here, and they are transferred to some distance in the second image. This is the second image, and of course, then we do what we call the mathematical cross correlation, and this is a mathematical operation on these two images. These are pure raw images, and of course you cannot track individual particles inside, because if you track individual particles, then it is not PIV. It is called PTV, particle tracking velocimetry. So you are not tracking individual particles. It's filled with particles, so you cannot distinguish every single particle. But with the help of mathematical cross correlation, uh, when you feed in these two images into cross correlation routine, it will find the displacement of the particles. So as you can see, there is a peak inside the cross correlation, for example, routine. Based on this peak that it finds in here, it will give you the velocity vector for you. So if I can get a vector on the field, it means that I have a velocity vector v at that specific time t. And the x component and y component of velocity will be again known to me. So this is, let's say, u, and this is small v, x and y components. So by two consecutive shots, these two shots that are separated by a very small time dt, I was able to get the displacement information of the particle at that instant of time. You see the instant t, for example. So if you redo this at some seconds later, you will not capture the same pictures. So these two pictures will not be the same pictures, because this picture belongs to that very instant of time. And when you take another picture, it won't be similar to these pictures. So you will see something different. Now let's say if I take 1000 image pairs, then I will have 1000 instantaneous data. And then if I average those 1000 later, I will get the mean or average data. So it could be mean velocity, it could be mean pressure, mean temperature, whatever. But with PIV, we are getting mean, we are getting the velocity field, not the pressure or temperature. Whatever. So I will have either instantaneous field or averaged field. And in here, these are the examples of some instantaneous velocity fields belonging to that experiment. So you can see that this is, for example, belonging for the conventional grid. So you see the weights of the bars of the grids. And for example, this is for the grid with the fractal shape I. So you are seeing this uh, big wake belonging to the big I bar, let's say in here. So the picture was taken in here. So it was actually cutting uh, this portion. And then you're seeing different wakes belonging to the, for example, the square grid or the circular grid. These are samples of instantaneous data. As you can see, it is increasing. The instantaneous number is increasing. So I'm showing you the first 200 realizations, for example. Okay, so um, in here, you see some examples of instantaneous velocity and vorticity fields. So, for example, in here, I was taking one of those pictures, and within that picture, I took this square, and what you see in here is the instantaneous velocity vectors that the camera captured. Okay. Again, for example, within this wake, you are seeing the instantaneous map of normalized vorticity and uh, the blue and red colors represent the counterclockwise and clockwise vorticity. Okay, so it's from -2 to 2. As you can see, this is instantaneous data. So you can see all these irregular shapes within the wake of the bar, for example. But at the right, what you see in here is, for example, the averaged velocity fields, and in here you're seeing the averaged vorticity fields. And as you can see, the averaged velocity and the averaged vorticity fields are much smoother than the instantaneous data that you see in the left hand side, because what we do is actually average the whole instance of these types of data and put it on one shot. So uh, what you see in here is actually what you can see in RANS based models when you try to numerically model the turbulence. So if you go and solve for some flows, if you, whatever you did, for example, for your wind tunnel uh, project, for this project that we have for wind tunnel, what you will get is the average flow. So those things that you will get are much like these things that you are seeing in the right hand side, not the things that you see in the left hand side.